All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Fantasy Crossover Podcast. I am your co-host, Daniel Duarte, joined here with Brian Acevedo. And we've recently gone over our 2021 season, NBA season division previews. We went through each division, looked at every team, looked at their offseason moves, trades, free agency, and also the draft, and where we saw that team ranking essentially within the division and performing moving forward. This episode is kind of the summary of it all. So we're going to go over our division winners individually, and then we're going to give you guys our 1 through 15 for each conference. So the conference winner and the bottom of the conference. Now, we don't have predictions on who wins the NBA final yet. We have kind of who's in the play-in and who's a playoff bound team, but we haven't done necessarily our playoff brackets yet, where we can incorporate Cinderella stories or kind of dark horse playoff teams yet. So we're not there yet, but we just want to give you guys our regular season rankings. So I'm going to hand this over to Brian, and he's going to kick it off.
All right, guys. Hopefully everybody's been doing well. We will go ahead and start with the division winners, and then I'll break it down into Eastern and Western Conference. So for the division winners, we'll start in the East. For the Atlantic Division, I have the Brooklyn Nets winning that division. Obviously, it seems like they're the most talented team. Uh, Philly has some questions, so I think that gives them a little bit of a leg up. Plus, they'll have 1 year of continuity altogether. I do think that Kyrie is going to be a little bit more available this upcoming year than he was last year. So that was a big reason why. But top to bottom, they're the most talented team. My only concern with them is whether or not they're going to take the regular season seriously enough. Obviously, as you know, they're pretty much focused on playoffs, winning a championship. But I think that kind of burned them last year by kind of taking their foot off the gas a bit in the regular season. So I think they'll come into this season. James Harden will play a full year with them as well, and that's going to help them with continuity. And I got them coming out of the Atlantic. For the Central Division, I have the reigning defending NBA champion Milwaukee Bucks coming out of the Central Division. I think the division got better, but they're clearly the top horse. They have Giannis, they have Middleton, they have Drew Holiday. They are the deepest team there. And I think they may not have as good a record as they had last year or in years prior, but I do think clear cut Milwaukee will win the Central Division. For the Southeast, I have Miami, the Miami Heat. Obviously, they added Kyle Lowry. That was the big move of their offseason that, like we discussed in our episode. They are a team that, coached by Spoelstra, they're hard-nosed defensive team, man. They play really hard. Even when you do beat them, it's usually not by much. That I think that playoff series this year was kind of an anomaly. I think they're going to be reloaded coming into this upcoming year, and I think it's going to make a really big difference. And I think it's going to be close between them and Atlanta, but I do have them squeezing it out just barely. And then as far as the West, I have the LA Lakers winning the Pacific Division. I think it goes without saying this is going to be another team that is going to really put an emphasis on the regular season as they have a lot of new pieces. So it may be a little bit of a slow start, but I think when the Lakers really get the ball rolling and they get comfortable with each other and that their new pieces, they're going to be in a really good spot to pretty much dominate the West. For the Northwest, I have Utah winning once again. I think they're obviously a really good, solid regular season team, and I mean, there's just really no reason, in my opinion, why they shouldn't win. Again, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, I think they'll continue to get a little bit better. And Quinn Snyder just does a really, really good job with that team. Like, they're hard nosed defensively. They shoot the heck out of the three ball. They're just a really well coached fundamental team. And spoiler, I have them finishing number one again. And then for the Southwest Division, I have the Dallas Mavericks winning it. I do believe that Luka is going to carry them to a division title here. I think they're going to be even better this year than they were last year, with Luka taking again another step, which is hard to believe. And so those are the division winners for me. And then I'll quickly break down my conference rankings from 1 to 15. I have the Brooklyn Nets number one. Number two, I have the Milwaukee Bucks. I have the Philadelphia 76ers at number three. I have the Miami Heat at number four. I have the Atlanta Hawks, number five. the New York Knicks at number 6, the Boston Celtics at 7, Chicago in the last playoff spot at number 8, the Bulls. I have the Indiana Pacers making the play-in tournament at number 9, the Charlotte Hornets making the other play-in spot at number 10, and then just missing, I have the Toronto Raptors at 11, the Washington Wizards at 12, the Detroit Pistons at 13, Cleveland Cavs at 14, and the Orlando Magic finishing in the last and 15th spot. Uh, just a real quick, brief rundown on the East. Obviously, as you guys can see with the division winners, they're obviously finishing towards the top. I have Atlanta finishing just behind Miami, mainly because while I really liked what I saw from Atlanta once they got a new coach over there, I am a little concerned with the new rules and how that's going to affect Trae Young. Obviously, he's a guy that relies quite a bit on free throws and kind of drawing fouls. So I think that's going to be a little bit of a transition period. And I think Atlanta might get off to a little bit of a rough start before they ultimately settle into things. The Knicks, they're a hard-nosed coach. They're a hard-nosed, well-coached team, just like the rest. They may not be quite as talented offensively, but Tibbs always gets the most out of his guys, and they're obviously going to be competitive. The Celtics, with all the moves we've kind of discussed, we know they're going to be a playoff team. And then the Bulls, I couldn't really leave them off with all the moves that they made in the offseason. It was tough with Indiana. They're a really good team. My concern with Indiana is just the injuries. That's really the only thing, but that's a team that could easily make the top 8 if things go well health wise for them. And then Charlotte is just one of those young teams that's right on the bubble, but they're just not quite as deep as some of those other playoff teams. And then, Toronto's an interesting young team, and the rest of them not quite where they need to be. And then as the Western Conference goes, the Utah Jazz I have as the number 1. I have the LA Lakers finishing number 2. I have Phoenix, the Suns at number 3. Denver Nuggets, the 4 seed. Golden State Warriors making a jump to the 5 seed. Dallas Mavericks going into number 6. The LA Clippers finishing number 7. I have the New Orleans Pelicans also making a jump at number 8, making the playoffs. I have the Portland Trailblazers at number 9. Memphis Grizzlies at 10. The San Antonio Spurs coming in at number 11. Sacramento Kings at 12. The Minnesota Timberwolves at 13, the Rockets from Houston at 14, and then Oklahoma City at 15. Just real quick on the West, obviously I have Utah repeating as the 1 seed. I think the Lakers, as I kind of mentioned earlier, they're going to be a team that is going to be really tough to beat. I think they're going to get off to a little bit of a rough start, but they'll continue to get better. Phoenix, the reigning Western Conference champions, I think they're going to be kind of in that hunt for the 1 seed throughout the season. Denver, it's going to hurt them a little bit not having Jamal Murray to start the season, and a lot of it is going to depend on when exactly he comes back and how he looks when he does, but I just don't see them not getting a top 4 seed. Golden State's going to make a big jump. That's kind of the big jump that I have them making. Obviously, that's based on Klay Thompson being healthy. Dallas Mavericks at the 6 seed. That's right about where they finished last year, so I don't see much movement on their end. I do have the Clippers going down to 7 without Kawhi. The New Orleans Pelicans are going to make a big jump, I think, with Zion and Brandon Ingram. I think those are 2 young guys that are going to be hungry, that they missed the playoffs completely last year, and I think they're going to be a team that sees a big leap just based on those two developing. Portland, that's going to be a team that I think has a lot of question marks coming into the season. I personally am not sold on some of the moves they made, and that's why I just have them missing it and making the plan. Maybe they win the plan and they beat New Orleans and get the last spot, but as of right now, I'm comfortable having them in the 9 spot. Memphis, again, just not quite sold with some of their moves. I have them at 10. San Antonio took a bit of a step back. They're at 11. And then obviously the other teams leave a lot to be desired. So it was interesting and fun to look over all these teams, but I feel pretty good about these rankings, Dan.
Yeah, I think, funny enough, I'm about to get into my rankings, and they're very similar. For the most part, we're pretty aligned, with the exception of a handful of teams. So I'm going to quickly get into my division winners. They're pretty much the exact same as Brian's. I just kind of want to touch on some that were a little bit more competitive than others in terms of kind of deciding who was going to be the team that came out on top. So very quickly, the Atlantic Division, that's a no-brainer. It's the Brooklyn Nets. it would have been closer had Ben Simmons not been going through this fiasco and dilemma with the trade request. Otherwise, it could have been neck and neck, and I could have easily seen Philadelphia pull it out. But given the circumstances, Brooklyn's a clear cut favorite. Milwaukee is a clear cut favorite for the Central Division. Some teams such as the Bulls made great moves, but they're the reigning champions for a reason. The Southeast was probably the most competitive in all the divisions for me. I have the Miami Heat winning the Southeast Division. It came down between them and the Atlanta Hawks. Atlanta, they've got a year under their belts with Nate McMillan, and they've just made great additions to the team with some players such as Sharif Cooper and Jalen Johnson. I think that it's still, a little ways away in terms of some of their core pieces like Trey Young, Clint Capella, and John Collins finding their way and really solidifying themselves as stars. So that's why I have the Miami Heat winning the division. In terms of the Pacific, in terms of the Western Conference, in the Pacific Division, I have the Los Angeles Lakers. With the addition of Russell Westbrook and all that veteran leadership they have, I definitely believe that the Lakers are the team to beat. This was very close with the team that represented the West in the NBA Finals last year, the Phoenix Suns. However, they have more star power. The Lakers just have arguably first ballot Hall of Famer in Russell Westbrook that they added. Phoenix, for the most part, kept their team the same. So I gave the slight edge and the nod to the Los Angeles Lakers. With the Northwest Division, I also have the Utah Jazz. It would have been interesting if Jamal Murray was not injured, how competitive Denver would be in this ranking alongside Utah, because I could easily see them kind of flipping back and forth. They've obviously had some great competitive series in the past. And then lastly, with the Southwest Division, I also have the Dallas Mavericks taking that division. Zion and the Pelicans have made some great moves. So if Zion continues to progress and he remains a Pelican, this could easily be the Pelicans' title in the future years, especially with a stud like Brandon Ingram right by Zion's side. But for the time being, Luka Magic is clearly progressing at an unprecedented pace. So I have Dallas taking the crown. In terms of the conference rankings, again, they're very similar to Brian. So, first off, in the East, I have the Brooklyn Nets, followed by the Milwaukee Bucks. Third, the Philadelphia 76ers. Fourth, the Miami Heat. Fifth is where we have a change. I have the Indiana Pacers. Sixth, I have the New York Knicks. Seventh, I have the Atlanta Hawks. Eighth, I have the Boston Celtics. Ninth, I have the Chicago Bulls. 10th, the Hornets. 11th, the Raptors. 12th, the Wizards. 13th, the Cleveland Cavaliers. 14th, the Detroit Pistons. And 15th, the Orlando Magic. So we're pretty aligned on a lot of teams. I have the Indiana Pacers making a huge jump for a couple of reasons. One, Rick Carlisle, I believe, is a great coach for Indiana compared to Nate. I don't remember his last name, Bjorken or whatever it was last year. And I also believe that yes, I also believe that their health issues are part of the past. They're just getting all their players back. T.J. Warren's coming back, and they have Malcolm Brogdon healthy. Miles Turner's going to be healthy. Domantas Sabonis, and they added a great rookie in Chris Duarte. So I think Indiana is definitely going to be a team to compete in the Central Division. Next, I have the Atlanta Hawks. Differing with Brian, I have them in the 7th seed compared to his 5th seed. Even though Atlanta is a great team and they have a lot of continuity, I think they have a lot to prove still. I think that ultimately Trey Young gets hurt by this rule change, and with so many pieces in and out of the lineup the last couple of games in the season, and also just in general, players coming back and forth, Bogdan, Gallinari, DeAndre Hunter, I hadn't seen that continuity, so I was just a little bit concerned of how it all meshes together. 8th, we have the Boston Celtics. With the loss of Kemba Walker, I'm very curious to see how Dennis Schroeder slides in to become this team's point guard. And not just that, they also have a new head coach. So with that new head coach, even though I think he was an assistant with Brooklyn last year, so he's definitely, he has a great resume. But how does he pan out as a first-year head coach with this relatively young team? Ninth, the Chicago Bulls. I definitely see them making the play-in tournament with all those additions made. And then 10th, the Charlotte Hornets, very aligned with Brian. They're a fun young team, but they're still a couple of years removed with experience. If we quickly jump over to the Western Conference division, we have the LA Lakers first overall. I have them beating out the Utah Jazz. Second, I have the Utah Jazz. Third, the Phoenix Suns. Fourth, I have the Golden State Warriors. Fifth, the Denver Nuggets. Sixth, the Dallas Mavericks. Seventh, Portland. Eighth, the Pelicans. Ninth, the Memphis Grizzlies. 10th, I have the Los Angeles Clippers. 11th, Sacramento. 12th, the Timberwolves. 13th, the San Antonio Spurs. 14th, the Houston Rockets. And lastly, the Oklahoma City Thunder in 15th. So a couple changes. First, I believe that the Lakers are definitely going to take the regular season a lot more seriously. Russell Westbrook is going to pick up the slack for the games that AD and LeBron do not play. And also, they got really burned last year by their lack of, I don't want to say commitment to the regular season, but just given the injuries that piled on, their playoff ranking ultimately was part of the reason that they were bounced in the first round. So I think that they do take the regular season a lot more seriously. The Utah Jazz and the Phoenix Suns, they kept the majority of their core together. I think that they're still both top three teams. Fourth, I have the Golden State Warriors, kind of pushing past the Denver Nuggets. I believe that even though Klay Thompson isn't due back until I believe December, I think that he definitely jumps right back into his situation strongly. And with Stephen Curry, arguably a top three pick in fantasy, they're going to be strong up until he comes back. Fifth, I have the Denver Nuggets. It's a little unknown how long Jamal Murray is going to be out for. And even though Michael Porter Jr. is going to pick up the slack, Jamal Murray's point guard abilities and just overall his leadership, I think, are going to be very missed. So I have them just sliding a little bit behind Golden State. Sixth, Dallas, they're pretty much stagnant compared to last year. Seventh, I have the Trailblazers. They have a lot of continuity with their roster for the most part from the previous year. Chauncey Billups is a new head coach, so that's a one thing to be on the lookout for. How does his scheme overall impact their play? But I believe in Dame time, and I think CJ is the perfect running mate for him. Eighth, I have the Pelicans making that jump, kind of along the same lines as Brian. Ninth, I have Memphis. I think John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. coming back healthy are definitely going to make an impact. And just some of their moves, such as getting Steven Adams, a great leadership guy. Also, Patrick Beverly, a great guy to have for John Morant to learn from. They're going to ultimately be in that play-in tournament again. The Los Angeles Clippers coming in 10th. That might come as a big surprise, but Kawhi is the leader of that team for a reason. He catapults them to where they need to be. Even though Paul George definitely picks up the slack and is going to be a fantasy beast this year, I don't know how they deal with the load management again. And for the most part, their offseason was a little bit underwhelming for me. So I had them coming in just making the play-in tournament. Then I have Sacramento kind of being out of the playoffs once again. And the only other team I want to call out is the San Antonio Spurs. They lost a lot of pieces. They didn't get a lot back in return. So, they definitely fall a few spots behind. But overall, that's my rankings. Again, I think Brian and I are pretty aligned for the most part. And it's going to be a really exciting year. I think that's the overwhelming theme here.
Yeah, man. As I was hearing you talk about the LA Clippers, I felt myself like, man, maybe I'm reaching on the Clippers. Maybe I'm a little too bullish on Paul George and how good they're going to do without Kawhi. Because last year they finished fourth in a pretty tough Western Conference, and I would argue the West is just as good, if not better, this year. And obviously, I have them finishing seventh. That's with the impression that they're here trying to be competitive, and they're playing to make the playoffs, obviously. My fear that you kind of touched on is that load management, that if they're in the ninth, 10th spot going into the last 2 months of the season, and they realize, hey, Kawhi's not coming back, are they going to pull the horses on Paul George? And if they do that, then I reserve judgment to change my prediction to them finishing in 10th as well, Danny.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest question mark because to me, their offseason was very, very underwhelming. They didn't make any big transactions. I think the biggest piece that they brought was Eric Bledsoe over, which I think was a great piece to add. But they lost a lot of leadership, like Pat Bev, Rajon Rondo. I just think that what they brought in necessarily wasn't the best for what they lost with the addition of Kawhi Leonard being out hypothetically for the entire year. So yeah, it's that I think is going to be the most contentious team in the Western Conference for where people have them ranking. But I'm more bearish on them than you, just given what I've seen in past years with the load management and overall what I've heard from reports on how their approach to the overall season is.
Yeah, and the other one team I wanted to mention, team that did not make the playoffs or play in that we both have making the playoffs is New Orleans. So I'll be honest, the New Orleans prediction is very much a gut feeling. I don't have stats or analytics to back up why I think the Pelicans are going to make the playoffs. I had them making the playoffs last year as well, and they failed me. I'm not the type of guy that likes to be super stubborn and say, hey, for sure this is going to happen. But something tells me Zion Williamson is going to make the playoffs as a New Orleans Pelican. Even if it's 1 year, I think they're going to just get there. There's just something in my gut that says Zion's going to make it this year.
I think for me, because I also have them making the playoffs. They made two very, very important pieces or transactions in the offseason to kind of get them there. Now they lost Lonzo Ball, but they did get back Devontae Graham and also Satoransky and Temple, so a couple pieces to make up for that loss. But the pieces that I thought ultimately are going to propel them there are one, they basically traded Steven Adams for Jonas Valanciunas. I think that's a huge upgrade for them overall. Jonas Valanciunas is an offensive beast. He can definitely be a presence in the paint. Whereas Steven Adams, he's kind of on the back end of his career, in my opinion, and he doesn't offer as much value. But secondly, and most importantly, they made a coaching change. They hired Willie Green as the new head coach compared to Stan Van Gundy. That Stan Van Gundy to me was like that hire last year was just not the right call. They were it was weird when I saw that he got signed, because even though he's a great analyst and he used to be a great head coach, that was over 10 years ago. The game has evolved, and some of the schemes that they were running just for today's NBA, I didn't necessarily align with them, and also he didn't have the respect of the locker room from everything that I heard. So I think that new head coach and also a couple new pieces with the Zion factor that you and I both agree on are the reasons that they make the playoffs.
Yeah, and then the last team I wanted to touch on, that it was a team that I think you were really high on over the offseason that I was a little surprised didn't make your top eight, was the Chicago Bulls. You I'm curious to hear, because they added a lot of pieces, and it's always tough when you're bringing in new guys, especially guys that are used to having the ball in their hands, kind of seeing, hey, how does that team dynamic, how is that going to look? But I'm curious to hear a little bit more on your thoughts on Chicago and why you have them just missing.
Yeah, for sure. So a couple of reasons why. One, it's a lot of changes. It's not just one; it's multiple changes. So I have them being right outside the playoffs and the plan, because I think it's going to take them, I would argue, the first half of the season to really figure out how they all gel together, because it's not just they're all ball dominant players for the most part that they really signed. So it takes a little bit of time. And also, this is just my personal preference. I don't think that Billy Donovan has been that proven in the NBA as a head coach. That's how I feel. But the Billy Donovan factor as a head coach, I still have a couple question marks compared to some of the other guys.
Trust me, you're not the only one with questions on Billy Donovan. There's quite a few people feel the same as you. And hey, man, he's been given a lot of talent in his career, in his coaching career, and yet to really show much as far as titles or playoff achievements either. So I think he's in the hot seat in Washington for sure as well, or in Chicago. I'm sorry. So I mean, other than that, Dan, it's been fun. Do you have any other thoughts you wanted to add or anything else?
No, I think we're very, very aligned for the most part. It's a shame we have another year of predicting Bradley Beal's outside the playoffs. Basically, a lottery bound team. Just given that talent that he has, that you and I both agreed they're just not making the cusp. The only other team that I thought was interesting is you're still very low on Minnesota. Uh, I just want to hear your take really quickly because they have a full year of D'Lo. They have some great pieces like Malik Beasley, Carl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards. Great head coach and Chris Finch. So I'm just curious your feelings in Minnesota overall.
Yeah, I mean, I was between them and Sacramento. That was kind of a tough call for me. The reason I went with Sacramento with a slight edge was because of their guard play. I do believe a little bit more in De'Aaron Fox, Halliburton, and I liked what I saw from Davion Mitchell, both in college and in the summer league. I think he's going to help their culture there. Well, I don't know if he's necessarily going to be the best fit. I think that their core is a little bit better as far as what the modern NBA is looking for than the Minnesota Timberwolves. I still think Carl Anthony Towns is going to have a monster year, especially fantasy wise. D'Angelo Russell, I mean, he's had his hits and misses, but I am concerned with the availability with him and Malik Beasley. There's just a lot of question marks around that team. But if Anthony Edwards takes another step, which I do anticipate he will, if Cat stays healthy and he's available, there's no reason why they couldn't pass. They couldn't pass Sacramento. It's pretty close, honestly.
I heard this crazy thing where Anthony Edwards grew an additional 2 inches since he's been
He did.
drafted. That's
He
crazy.
did, man. I
So
mean, and that just goes to show those young players, they're worth having because you just their how do I word it? Their ability to their potential. It's a lot bigger, so they can definitely get there's more opportunity for improvement year to year over a guy who's in his late 20s, things like that. Anthony Edwards, I think he's just scratching the surface last year. He's going to be a really fun player to watch for a long time.
yeah, I agree. So again, guys, Brian and I, for the most part, we're pretty aligned on our Eastern Conference, Western Conference picks, and we're completely aligned on our division winners overall. So that's pretty much it for us, guys. Thank you so much for listening to our division winners and our conference rankings. If you guys have any questions, if you guys want to interact with us, call us out. Maybe we made the wrong picks overall. Interact with us on social. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on Reddit. Uh, Obviously, this podcast is available on all streaming services, so give us a shout there. And yeah, we appreciate the feedback. We love interacting with everyone. But that's pretty much it for us. Thank you guys so
Yeah.
much, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
I had one more quick comment, Dan. Just a quick announcement for everybody. We're not going to be doing an episode this Friday, the 17th, but because we're going to be working on our player rankings for Monday the 20th. So just wanted everybody to keep an eye on that for Monday the 20th. The player rankings will start.
Yes, the heavily anticipated top 150 that we have for fantasy. Quick preview: it's all category. We're focusing category leagues on that, just in case anyone wants to differentiate. But yeah, we will be taking this Friday off. Thank you very much for the call out, Brian. Everyone, I hope you guys are having a great week. Everyone's blessed, and we'll see you soon.
Take care, guys.